Alrighty, so Unit 4 review part 2. I'm going to start off with number 10. Calculate the average rate of change for f of x equals 3x squared plus 2x plus 1. So right here, this is my quadratic, and it wants to find the average rate of change between 2 and 4, and it can include 2 and 4 because it has those lines underneath. So all that means is the rate of change is the slope. It's the same thing. So it's your change in f of x or change in y all over your change in x. So we have to find what the y values are because it only gave us the x values here. All right, so we know our x values are 4 and 2. Right? Because this is kind of like our x1 and x2, and so the slope formula has like y2, minus y1 over x2 minus x1, so that's why the x2 goes first. So now we just have to figure out these top numbers, and how you do that is you plug in 2 and 4 into x. That gives you what your y is. So let's try 2. Okay, so instead of f of x, I'm going to write f of 2. 3 times 2 squared plus 2x plus 1. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. You do exponents first. So 2 squared is 4 plus 2. Oh, forgot to put a 2 there. Ha. All right, 3 plus 4 is 12. 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1. We have 12 plus 14 is 16, and that is 17. So when we plugged in 2, we got 17. That goes above here. That goes here in this spot. Because remember, the y, put the x and y1 on the right side and x2 and y2 on the left side. All right, so now let's plug in 4 into that. If I am going too fast, you just might have to watch this again. I didn't forget to put the 4 in that time. All right, so we have 4 squared is 4 times 4, which is 16. Alrighty, so then 3 times 16 is 48, plus 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1. 48 plus 8 is 56, 57. So 57 goes here. So now we figured this out. 57 minus 17 is 40. 4 minus 2 is 2. And then 40 divided by 2 is 20. It's the same thing as finding the slope. We've done this before, where you had to use the slope formula to find the slope. Rate of change is really no different. So you just have to think about, it gives you your two x's. It gives you 2 and 4. So when we're trying to find the slope between 2 points, it gave us 2 and it gave us 4, but it didn't give us y. That is why we had to use that quadratic formula, or I'm sorry, the quadratic equation here to find us our y's. So once we plugged in 2, we got out 17. And then once we plugged in 4, we got out 57. So these are pretty much the 2 points that we just found the slope for using that slope formula. All right, so let's go to the next one. Alrighty, so this is a transformation, so let's go ahead and get back into that transformation kind of viewpoint. So when it says describe the difference between the graphs f of x, this is the original graph, and g comes second. The reason why is because you usually label lines in alphabetical order, so f comes before g. So this was the original one, so I have to think to myself, what is the difference other than the physical name, this is just the name of it, from 4x squared, or I'm sorry, f of x equals 4x squared and g of x. So first thing I notice is I went from a positive number here to a negative. That means we're talking about a reflection. So if it goes from positive to negative, I'm like, okay, it's going to be a reflection, but what kind? Is it going to flip over the x-axis, or is it going to flip over the y? Well, if you think about it, that negative sign, because remember, these are just fancy ways of saying y, that negative sign is going to be multiplied to an x. not a y. So if it's going to be multiplied to the x, that means it's going to change all of my x values negative, which means it's going to flip over the x-axis. It's like if this was your original graph, now it's going this way. So it's going to flip over that x-axis. So when I go through these questions, A, this graph is obtaining by flipping over the y-axis. Nope, it's not A. B, this graph is obtained by flipping over the x-axis. Yes, could do that. This one's flipping over the x. Yep. And D says flipping over the y. Nope. So I am now between B and C. And all I did was look at one piece of information. So now I'm going to look at another piece of information. I went from 4 to 8. Okay, and so that number is in front of x. So I think if you remember me talking about it a couple of times ago, that number, if it's not a fraction, right, because you can't have a fraction of a person, those are the amount of people pulling on that rubber band. So if more people are pulling on the rubber band, it is going to get skinnier. You are stretching the rubber band. So the difference between B and C, one says it's compressing and one says it's stretching. It is stretching because there are more people pulling a rubber band, so it's going to get even skinnier. They're just pulling downward. People are down here. I'm really bad at drawing stick people. So the people are down here pulling on that rubber band. It would only be compressing if that number actually went smaller. All right. Cool. Okay, so let's do the next one. All right. Ooh, we're going back to average rate of change, which average rate of change is just a slope. Just a slope, same thing. Okay, so we have our quadratic formula and we have our x's. So pretty much we're going to do the slope formula again. It's pretty much what we're doing, but I only have 0 and 2. I only have 2 pieces of this information. I got to find my y's. In order to do that, remember f of x is just a fancy way of saying y. I need to plug in 0 and 2 to find my y. So let's plug in 0 first. So if I plug in 0 in for x, I will get 0 squared is 0. 7 times 0 is 0, plus 10. I will get 10. So that goes here. So now let's try 2. F of 2 equals 2 squared plus 7 times 2 plus 10. 2 squared is 4. 7 times 2 is 14 plus 10. 4 plus 14 is 18. 18 plus 10 is 28. All right, so pretty much once you know that, we can do this is x1, y1, x2, y2. So we'll do 28 minus 10 over 2 minus 0, which turns into 18 over 2. Which simplifies to 9, so it must be C. Alrighty, let's keep it going. My gosh, I might have to do a part 3. Okay, let's talk about more, let's go back. Now let's think more about transformations. Alrighty, so when I see this was my parent function, and this is how it changed. So let's talk about things that changed it. First thing I tell myself is I had nothing in front of that x squared, and now all of a sudden I have a 4. So all of a sudden I have this 4, so that means more people are pulling on the rubber band. It is going to narrow or stretch my parabola. So when I look at this part, I'm like, I can go ahead and get rid of the ones that say it goes wider. It doesn't. The higher that number goes, the more people stretch. If it's a fraction, that's the only way it's going to get wider. All right, so cool. Hey, now we're at a 50-50 shot. All right, so this function is transformed this way. So then the next thing I notice is this minus 2. Now, this minus 2, he is inside the parenthesis with the x. So if he is with the x, that means he's going to move with the x. He's going to go left or right. And how the x's work is backwards. If it is a -2, you think it goes to the left, but it actually doesn't. It moves to the right. I wish there was a cute little trick I could help you remember, but it's just kind of how it works. The x's go backwards. It's like I don't know. So if it's a -2 in here, it's actually going to move to the right. Okay. Sir. Ooh, rate of change, except I don't have to do all this fancy formula stuff because it gave me a graph. So it says it wants the intervals from -3, which is here, it's this line, which is this dot right here, and that dot is -3, 5, 6, looks like it's -3, 8, to -2. Okay, this one. So that dot looks like it's -2, 4. Okay, so it wants the average rate of change. It is a little bit of a curve, but that's why we use the word average. I just want the slope from one dot to the next. Okay, so we do not have to use the fancy formula. We can just straight up use counting slope. So read it from left to right. We go down 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we went down 4. Then we go over 1. Over 1. I can simplify that to -4. So it has to be B. I love it when they give you the graphs because it's super easy to find it. And I didn't have to do all that. If you did the formula, if you did that, perfectly fine. That works too. You'll end up getting -4 over 1. But if it gives you a graph, man, just count from dot to dot. How did I know that I was picking these dots? It says between x is -3 and -2. So on the x-axis, this little chunk of space is when x is -3 or -2. That is how I got those two dots, in case you were wondering. All right. I feel like the next one's really similar. Estimate the average rate of change for this one. Doesn't even give you the formula. Don't need it. So it wants between x is -4 and 4. So I'm going to find -4. When x is -4, it looks like it's right here. Follow that sucker up, and we have that dot. And then when x is 4. So this is when x is 4, and that's that dot. So now it's just a counting game here. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. It went down 16. And it's a negative because we're going down. Now let's count over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. And -16 divided by 8 is -2. This should not be new, by the way. You should be able to find the slope of a line from a graph. just so you know. These are pretty easy, though. All right, last but not least, and I have a minute to get this done, between -8 and -4. -8 looks like it falls here, so it's this dot. -4 looks like it's that dot. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. That 4? These lines are weird. How'd they count them? Are they by 2s, maybe? Let's see, that's -10. So they must be by 2s. Sorry. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it went up 8. And somehow these are counted by 1s. 1, 2, 3, 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2. And it doesn't say that it goes by 2s, but I just figured this must be 0, and this is -10, and there's only 5 lines in between, so it must jump by 2s. That's how I figured it out. So I went up 8 and over 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2. I simplified it. All right, that is the end of your review, and I did it in 15 minutes, so there's not a part 3.